Good evening. Just wanted to put one out about, the namesake of my channel here, which, again, I don't even know if it's making any difference or what it means to anybody, but, the hope is that, people sort of stumble across, but tonight I thought I'd put out there a request. Anybody who stumbles across this, if you're, piqued, or if you have any knowledge concerning chemtrails or what the CIA is calling stratospheric aerosol injections, I'm just wondering if you have any ideas on what we can do to combat it, to bring it to the fore. Is it something that I need to start a door-to-door information campaign? Is it something that, we try to take to the media, which we all know the media isn't going to do shit about nothing, but, any suggestions? Because the reason I'm asking is here in Southeast Michigan, I've been paying attention to this for probably, a little better than 4 years. And it used to be that I would notice, on average, maybe 2 to 3 planes every couple of days. And, that's one of the reasons why it kind of sort of piqued my interest, was because I had begun to notice these planes. Because ever since I was little, I've always looked to the sky. I've always been interested in the stars, and I actually wanted to fly helicopters when I was in the military. My test scores were good enough. My recruiter asked me, "What do you want to do?" I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "Pick any job you want. Your test scores are high enough, you can have any job you want in the military." And so I thought I wanted to fly helicopters. Well, I signed up when I was 17, so my dad wouldn't sign for 6 years. He said, "I'll sign for 2 years, and, you can decide what you want to do after that." Well, that 2 years ruined it, so I got the hell out. I couldn't handle that shit, I took all the training, I did everything I was supposed to, but I just could not handle the fucking, some asshole that was, if I saw him on the block, we'd be at odds. But in the military, I got to bite my tongue. I can't say shit to them. But anyhow, I digress. The idea being that I wanted to fly helicopters. So I've always been interested in the sky. I've always looked up. I've always looked to the stars. And that's when I began to notice, a few years ago, the planes that, the exhaust trail was just longer than usual. And then I began to, and this is before I had done any research at all. I noticed, and I was under the assumption that, or just kind of the idea that, okay, well, maybe there's something different with their fuel, because you go from, in cars, I was in the automotive industry for a number of years, and kind of the example would be regular fuel versus unleaded fuel. They burn differently. They give you a different exhaust. They give you different materials that come out of the exhaust. And so that was just kind of the thing, was, well, maybe it's just something to do with they're using a different fuel. Well, then I discovered some of the, by chance, I discovered some videos of, an example would be a politician in Australia who came straight out and was discussing Agenda 21 and what the hidden hand had planned, and she was vocalizing the objection to Agenda 21, and she had mentioned at that point chemtrails, and I was just like, chemtrails, I was like most people, like, yeah, right, okay, And then I found another one with a woman who was addressing, I believe she was addressing the UN, the United Nations, and discussing chemtrails. And I could be wrong on the group that she was addressing, but I thought it was the United Nations. It could have been a different governing body. However, the point being that I found that video of this woman who had, all the credentials, some PhD, who had an impeccable reputation, and here she was talking about these materials that were being sprayed in the atmosphere. And then I heard some of the other conspiracy researchers, that I put a lot of stock in, discussing these chemtrails. And so I began to recognize that the planes that I was seeing were pumping chemtrails. So then I went to, doing more research on it and studying more and watching as many videos as I could and Googling, and I discovered one by a man who runs a site called geoengineeringwatch.org, and he put together, to me, what is a fascinating documentary, because he puts it together in such a way that it connects the dots where there's no denying it. And that documentary was Geoengineering Documentary 2016. So if you were to YouTube that, Geoengineering Documentary 2016, it's got a lot of information, and it's really quite eye-opening. Well, so what I'm getting at, or the path that I'm going down now, is that I've been paying attention to this for the better part of 4 years, watching the planes and just trying to make a mental note of if I could tell a difference in, the weather, or the just the way that I felt, and I've noticed that since the Brexit, the day before Father's Day, I counted, I think it was 23 planes that day, the day before Father's Day 2016, and there was approximately 23 planes that I counted, and that was, not including anything that I missed. And typically when I would see them spraying, even the day before Father's Day, typically when I'd watch them spraying, it's at one point on the compass. In other words, it would be, they're all sort of directed in a northerly direction from where I'm at, or easterly or westerly, and they were all kind of isolated to the compass points. However, here within the last week or so, I'm noticing that it's like a 360-degree panorama, and they have definitely accelerated since the Brexit. Now, I've come to since found out recently that part of what they're using the chemtrails for is something called Project Bluebeam, and that's an attempt by NASA to congeal all of the world religions into one, what they're calling New Age religion, and that's a stepping stone to a one world government. And something that came to mind, which I think is really very plausible, because when you go into the shade on a day where there's heavy spraying and you're in the shade, the temperature feels fine, the breeze blowing, it's comfortable. But the second you step into the sunlight, it feels as though somebody's put a magnifying glass, like you're an ant under the magnifying glass, and you're just roasted. Now, what I've come to find out is that with the spraying, the chemtrails, it's actually allowing UVC rays through, which UVC is one step below X-ray. And you know what they do when they X-ray your body? They put a lead coat over you to prevent, poisoning, X-ray poisoning to the rest of your body. And so now we're one step away from X-ray that these chemicals are allowing in from the ultraviolet spectrum from the sun. Well, some of the things that I'm starting to put together through the information that I'm gathering is something that I believe is very plausible, is that these people are actually terraforming the planet. Many respectable conspiracy researchers and many people who are not necessarily whistleblowers, but in that vein, have firm beliefs that we have had contact from otherworldly beings, and a lot of those they call the reptilians from the Draco star system. And so these draconians, obviously reptilian, it's absolutely plausible that they are terraforming the planet. Now, you start to put world events together, and you've got China and Japan in a military standoff. Now you've got Iranians sending speedboats towards U.S. destroyers, which the U.S. then had to turn around and fire warning shots. And Abomination would not allow his commanders to engage those Iranians. Abomination has strengthened the Iranians to the point where they have nuclear, or will have nuclear weapons soon. The Russians, who, Turkey shot down a Russian plane just a month ago, but now they're becoming friends. And so you've got all these world events that, when you look at them carefully enough, they're pointing right towards World War III. And the greatest way to change society in a form you want it to change to is war. So now they're pushing towards World War III. You've got all the racial tensions and police tensions in America. You've got the farce that's the elections coming. You've got all the world events. And now they've amped up their chemtrail regime, the spraying of these aerosols. So I'm asking anybody who stumbles across this, if you have any ideas on what we can do to bring this to the fore, because in my opinion, chemtrails are the absolute number one priority over everything else going on in the world, because chemtrails affects every single person on the planet. It's changing our planetary structure. It's causing global warming, causing the ice caps to melt. It's poisoning every single one of us. So if you have any information on what we can do to combat this, I respectfully request any information you have. Other than that, I appreciate your time, and thank you.